Hey guys, I'm going to do a video, I guess, on what I love and what I hate about 12 valve Cummins. Had a few people ask, why I like them, what I don't like about them. So I thought I'd do a little video up. And yeah, so we'll go from there. So, as most of you guys know, there is more than one injection system for a 12 valve. You can have a VE pump, and I'm sure some of you guys probably would have probably recognized this engine. This is I call it the guinea pig, which actually might be going in that dually that I bought. Maybe. I haven't decided what to do with that truck yet. But this is a decent running engine, so it might end up in that dually. But anyways, on with the story. So this engine, this is a P-pump engine. It's 160 horsepower, so you can get these engines, as most of you guys are going to already know. You can get a 160 horsepower engine. Okay, we're talking P-pump application in a Dodge truck, because there's a bunch of different applications. But we're talking Dodge truck in this. For the most part, we always just talk about Dodge truck stuff, right? So Dodge truck, P-pump, you get a 160, a 175 horse, a 180, or a 215. Usually the lower horsepower application is an automatic, the higher horsepower application is a standard. But anyways, there is a little bit of variation. Actually, maybe let's go back. So there's a VE. The VE came out in '89 in the pickup truck. They did come out before that. But VE came out in '89, and they were non-intercooled, 160 horsepower. Well, the original ones actually were a little hotter than 160 horsepower, but let's say they're 160 horsepower. So in 91 and a half, they went to intercooled. I think 91 you could actually buy. Not 100% sure. Comment down below if you know for sure. Pretty sure it was 91. You could start getting intercooled or non-intercooled. It was an option. But anyways. And those ones, they're great engines. They have the same issues, whether P-pump or VE, and they're both good engines. Just the power potential of the VE isn't as high, and it's not as easy and reliable high horsepower. But anyways, so talking about most of this stuff crosses over, other than the actual P-pump stuff. The VEs themselves, they're good. Just basically the way they are. You really don't have to do too much. You want to stay relatively stock. VE engine is an awesome way to go if you want to stay, let's say, below 200 horsepower. Great option. They will run great. Don't have a lot of issues. They start real easy. Perfect. So if that's the option and that's what you want to do, right on, good option. If you want to go into a higher horse application, I would recommend going to a P-pump. And I prefer P-pump over the VE. I'm power hungry, so the VE is the VE for me. Great all-around engine, and I probably will do a build on one after I get a few of the builds that we got on the go done. But because I'd like to do some higher horsepower numbers and maybe see if I can crack the high horsepower number that is on record right now for them. So that's, I guess, the like part for the most part. The P-pump, you can get lots of power out. They work good. And they're a very reliable engine. They last. They got a good oiling system. They have a relatively good cooling system with a few little tweaks and tips and stuff. But now something I don't like is the 160, 175 horse pumps had govern issues. So if you have one of those pumps, you potentially can have a govern issue. They all did have govern issues, but they were way worse. Unmodified stock pumps, original builds. If they've been updated, rebuilt, then they would have updates in them. They won't have issues because it's been fixed. But that's that's what I like. But one thing that sucks about them is they're heavy. These things, like this one sits, okay, with the rest of the parts on the front, you're pretty close to 1,000 pounds of engine. So it's not a light unit. So now something that I did want to show, I got one that's on a stand here, No pump on it, but it's all painted up pretty. But so something that I don't like about these things is, oh, actually, let's go back to this one for a second. One thing that kills a lot of these engines, probably the most out of all of them, is killer dowel pin. I did do a video on it if you want to see the video, how to fix it. But basically there's a pin in here, and without this tab on it, this pin will come out, drops out. Usually, if you get really lucky, this one actually was gone, and it hit the case, didn't break anything. But usually what happens is it takes this case and shoves it out, breaks it, or it falls down and gets chewed up and breaks camshaft off. Usually when it does it, breaks camshaft off, bends valves, bends push rods, and usually shears this key off too. So it's a bad day when that happens. Something else that kind of sucks on them is this gasket. So the timing case gasket, this is the timing case. This gasket gets brittle, falls out, or cracks and starts to move, and then they spew oil. So they'll spew oil here or back at the ejection pump. I'll show you on this engine. Just got to walk over here. So the light, because you probably guys won't be able to see, but that it'll be right in here, in that area right there, kind of in that corner. Light's a little on the, sucks with these lights is they're super bright, but they're not great for the camera. But something else, these side covers, tappet covers, they really like to leak as well, so that kind of sucks. And you can buy billet ones. The billet ones, as long as you silicone them on, they're good. Usually with the factory one, what we do is we use the factory gasket, and then we case sealant the gasket to the cover, and then case sealant the gasket to the block, and then they never move after that. So that's some of the downfalls. Also too, these things are bad for blowing, I shouldn't say blowing head gaskets, having head gasket issues. There again, I happen to have a cylinder head sitting on the bench. This is actually a different one than the one I was doing the video of the other day. That one we've got all back together and it's ready on the shelf to go. But what happens is the block on this surface, so your thermostat goes right here. The block in the head, for some reason, they like to blow head gaskets right here. And lots of times you'll get a low spot. Either the head will be twisted from end to end, so this will be low versus this, you know, from corner to corner. And the head gasket will leak right here, and then sometimes they will leak back here too. But usually it's right here that they leak. So that kind of sucks. But you know, nothing a head gasket, a fresh surface, and myself personally a set of head studs doesn't fix. And I would O-ring too if it was mine, but I guess I own a machine shop, so I'm kind of maybe a little bit irrelevant on some of this stuff. I'm able to do it myself with the equipment that I have, so it kind of biases me to how I do things sometimes. Something actually, well, we're looking at the head here. Something that these are bad for is, this is a brand new head, so it's not cracked, but they crack the heads will crack right across this gap right here, valve to valve. Sometimes if you have a 9mm head, this is a 7mm head. All the new ones will be 7mm for the most part. They will crack from the injector hole across here or across here. So that kind of sucks, because when that happens to the head, okay, lots of guys run them and don't have problems, but the head is junk. Now, also too, is sometimes you'll get localized cracking in the valve, in the seat itself. That's not a huge deal as long as it isn't past the seat surface, and you could put a seat in it, but these things aren't really that expensive, so it's hard to justify spend the money to put seats in it, to me anyways. So that's something that you have to be aware about. They do have issues, and that kind of sucks, but that's kind of nature of the beast in any engine, I guess you would say. But I'm going to flip this thing over and I'll show you a couple other little things. It's actually incredibly hard to do this stuff with one hand. Now, something else that you want to watch, if you guys are having head gasket issues on 12 valve, or I shouldn't say head gasket issues, if you're having coolant in the oil issues, something that you want to check is if you pull your valve covers off, pull them all off, and check inside here. And what happens, it's really common actually for these things, is where I just put that marker, you will get a crack from here down into here on one of these, on one of them, whether it be, doesn't matter, doesn't seem to matter, they all do it. These castings are actually thicker than the original factory, so they tend not to do it, but you get a crack in here and it'll leak coolant into the oil and you think it's a head gasket. We see that a lot. So just something to be aware of, but that's something that kind of sucks, right? But I don't know if it's just an inherent design, I guess you would say. It's not per se okay, maybe it's a design flaw because they fixed it in these ones. But nonetheless, something that sucks about them. What else we got? I wish they would have put better springs in them from factory, but you got to take in consideration these things were designed as an industrial engine, not as a hot rod diesel engine. As when they first built them, there was really not much of that. So it's kind of cool that they've came along and done that stuff for us. So we talked about the cracking. What else did we talk about? Frost plugs. So something that you should address, and in a stock application doesn't usually happen. Higher horsepower applications that you're winging more RPM, this front frost plug, which is underneath your fan hub, that right there, that will sometimes pop out, so you can buy a billet one of those. And then also this back one, that one will pop out too. There again, you can buy a billet one that bolts in there. If you're going to do that, I personally would do the side ones as well, but you don't have to. It's just those ones are really hard to get at. So, but if you're buying those, you can buy a package and do the ones on the side too. Other than, you know, when you're for your block heater, if it's a non-storm block, then, which is the storm block is the newer one with the dual oil drains, then obviously then doesn't, depending on which block you have, some you have to buy more frost plugs than others. But that's, you know, for that. Really, these things, they're basically good to go. You can wing them 4,000 RPM, not really have to do a lot to them. They have a good oiling system. You know, they're balanced relatively well, right from factory. Now, don't get me wrong, you can improve on that, but they are a pretty stout engine to begin with. And that's the reason that a lot of guys like them. That's the reason I like them. Man, you can, you know, stock form, you know, you can bag on them pretty good as long as it's a decent engine to begin with. They get good fuel mileage. That's another nice note. If you got it tuned up properly. Obviously, if you got it hot rodded too much, then they get hard on fuel. But what else? The oil pump, or sorry, the vacuum pumps do like to leak oil, so that's something that you want to keep an eye out for. What happens is the seal, oh, if I can get it far enough away here, the seal inside here, right there. My hand out the way. This right here, need better light. But the seal inside there goes, they're really not that bad to change, but they do have issues, and then they leak. But other than that, they are a very good engine. I love these engines, the P-pump in general. They do have some inherent cooling issues, not moving enough coolant from the back of the engine, and that's, you can get coolant bypasses, which I will do a video on. You can get a pressure bypass. So the pressure bypass you would plumb, I plumb anyway. I plumb in either here, or I drill and tap, or I tap, I guess, this plug, and you bring it up onto a standpipe and then across, so the pressure gets up to a certain point and then it bypasses. Or you can buy a fleece style one, which goes onto the back. And there's probably other guys that make them too. Just the fleece one has a thermostat in it, which I like. So it goes right there, and then the line just comes up and then goes into your thermostat housing right there. and then bypasses into the rad. And really, other than that, they're a real solid motor. Like I said, I really love these engines. You know, this is basically, this is the engine that I'm known for. Well, basically B series stuff, but I'm known for, you know, all the 12 valve stuff around here anyway. And working on with YouTube, more and more people will get to know that, I suppose. And yeah, really, there isn't much other, you know, you can, you know, as far as power, this is an old setup that Andrew built when this was in his, this was when it was as original twin turbo setup that he originally built, and built on a budget. It was literally out of scrap that I had laying around. He had the HX35, the old 3B was the turbo that I had laying around, and the piping and stuff we had laying around. So he built that, and you know, it's a tried and true old school compound setup. So you know, it worked for what he was doing at the time. So and I don't know, I think he's actually going to sell this engine. I think, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with it, but we will see. I guess I don't know, that's really not much other than that I can think. Oh, you do have to watch with some of them if you are looking at buying one. Now, there isn't very many 12 valves that have it, but there is some. If you look right here, when you're buying a 12 valve, if it's a late 12 valve, late 97 or 98, check to make sure there isn't a 53 here. Because if there's a 53 there, not all of them are, and that's, there again, I'll do a video on that, but the 53 block was where it was casted, and they had cast shift. And sometimes what happens with them is the side of the block, of course I can't see the side of the block, side of the block, got them all bagged up. Side of the block, what happens is, yeah, you guys can see that. What happens is they crack in here, right across there, and then it'll leak coolant. So that's something that you want to watch if you are buying one. You want to make sure it's not a 53 block. Now, not all 53 blocks are bad, but inherently a large percentage of them were bad. So you don't really want to buy. I just tell guys to steer away from them. There is ways of ultrasonic checking them, but personally I wouldn't take the chance for the average guy. It's just easier. Or if you're buying one and it is a 53 block, then hey man, you take the gamble. If it cracks, as long as you know when you're going into it what you're getting, hey, by all means. So I don't know if there's much other than, yeah, like if you get into, I guess I should talk maybe about the horsepower ones, horsepower levels. The 160, 170 pumps or engines per se, the engine itself is the same, are good for a lower horsepower application. So if you want to stay below, let's say 600 horsepower, maybe 650 horsepower, the 160 and 175 horse by all means is an awesome option. They're easier to get, pay less money for them for that reason, because of the pump. Now if you want to make more power than that, if you start with a 180 or a 215 horse pump, which is the later years, there's two things that's nice about it. One is the injection pump is easier to make power with. If you're rebuilding it, you don't have to change the cam in it, you don't have to change plungers in it, you don't have to change a bunch of stuff. So you save money in there. It's really the pump that's the difference. Now the other difference is if you look at this block here, yeah, so if you look at this block, there's an oil drain right here, and then no oil drain back here, right? Now, if you go to, I think this is a single oil drain too. Yeah, I got a common rail one here. So the later blocks, non-common rail, mind you, I just have a common rail block sitting here on the floor that we're tearing apart. It has a dual oil drain. So an oil drain there and then an oil drain at the back, which is nice if you're going to put compounds on, because you don't have to worry about putting a hole in your oil pan for your drain. So that's nice. And the fittings on that block are metric versus standard for a couple of the fittings, but there again, really that doesn't make any difference. And other than that, I don't know if there's really much other than that to talk about on them. They're really, you know, they're a good engine. They have problems, but not like a lot of problems, like, you know, like the 6-liter Fords at 100% fail rate, you know, or I think it's close to 100%. It's got to be like 99.9%. It's high. You know, these engines are real good engines. There's like a half a dozen things you do to them and they just work. So that's, you know, one nice thing about them. So that's, I guess, my rant on what I like and what I don't like. I don't know, can't think of anything else to add to it. So like, subscribe. If you have anything that you want me to do, hit me up in the comments. And thanks for watching.